I have a secretary with a sense of humor, so I have no idea what she gave me for slides. And this is an interesting topic. I mean, it's like trying to suggest to fish on how to swim. I know that most of you understand recovery. So this slide was a favorite of mine. I think that the definition that Bob and Garrett and others came up with for recovery is a positive focus toward a contented life, voluntary positive focus, and that cultural shift is important. I also think it's important that we find a solid definition of recovery in our hearts, and that may be different for some people depending on how they get to their recovery. Whether that be through treatment or spiritual conversion or with medication-assisted treatment. Critical, I think, is this integrity between your beliefs and actions to form a cohesive life in harmony with our deepest values. You know, for brain disease, the first target of that addiction is our awareness. And, you know, where else do we find really a disease model where it takes about 20 people to sit in a room and tell you that you've been a jerk? You know, I mean, it's a difficult thing. We have intervention structured, and, you know, the last one to know the damage and the wreckage is usually the alcoholic. So the solution that is suggested in this thing is a group of steps. You know them as the 12 steps, but many of the people I introduced the steps to just don't get it. So here they are in a little bit of a different way than you might have heard them in the past, that there is a power that wants to kill me. They usually get that. There is a power that wants me to live. Many people who don't get this the first time turn around at step 3 because they can't decide whether they really want to live or die. The brain that's been hijacked is telling them to do things that they've been told will kill them, and yet they do them repeatedly over and over again, and some just don't make it back. You know, then you've got to decide that you've lived your life with a life of resentment and hostility and anger and deceit, and basically you've been a jerk, and you know, we're trying to clean up our lives, so we have to kind of tell our embarrassing story to someone who cares and is going to keep us honest about that. And another decision is decide whether we want to live that way any longer. A very important one, and sometimes difficult to pull the addict away from those drugs that they've had a love affair with for many years. The humility step, critical, and number 7 is really one of my favorites. You know, if you want to change, you're going to have to ask for some help and be willing to step outside of yourself. For the self-centered, that's a pretty difficult thing. You know, sometimes recovery could be suggested that it's the result of trying to continually convince the disinclined to take positive advice, you know? So we have to go and then make our amends after taking a thorough inventory of all that we've done wrong and fix what we can without doing no harm. I can remember a guy making his amends to me after 25 years. We were in medical school together. We were at a convention, and he came up and sought me out and said, "I have an amends to make to you." 25 years later, he told me he had an affair with my wife. I told him I had an affair with his, and so it kind of worked out. Mistakes are human, and we've got to be kinder to ourselves and really try to do this incredible cleanup on a daily basis. A very critical part of recovery is getting the notion that we really are doing this one day at a time. If you want help, you're going to have to ask for it for someone other than yourself. And most importantly, one of the great paradoxes of this disease that, you know, surrender to quit and to keep it, you've got to give it away. Let's see, my secretary's doing this to me. Oh, Bobby Mooney from Willingway. Some of you know Bobby Mooney told me always to put a picture of the brain in my presentations. It makes people think I'm smart. Let me move on. But I like that one actually because it does show you where choice is, you know, up in that prefrontal cortex and where my disease operates, and all the morals and values in the world are not going to stop me from seeking a drug. It's just going to hijack my brain. And this is a critical slide that I like to show to family members, trying to explain to them that premeditated choice, analyzing past, present, and future is something that they do on a daily basis. And they're responsible for that. They can stop usually bad behaviors if punishment or outside forces are significant enough, because they're really not going to go into withdrawal if someone takes the watch that they've stolen away from them. Unlike the disease in a different area of our brain, which we've inherited, there's no free will involved whatsoever, and it really helps them understand what's been going on for their addict or alcoholic. And this slide tells you really that this disease will always fail unless we treat all the components. We can't just go after the biological component. We're going to fail miserably if we just treat the psychological component and biological without including the social relationships, the family, and this sense of detachment, isolation, a lack of spirituality. We're going to be lost. So it's imperative that to be sober and in recovery, we learn a concept of now, so that time is our friend and not our enemy. A very difficult thing for addicts and alcoholics to do, to be present, to learn to meditate, to learn to pray. These steps that I've told you about are based on very specific principles. Honesty, that you're totally and completely powerless over a disease that hijacks your brain. Hope and faith, that there's going to be a solution if you look outside of yourself. Courage, and most importantly in step 5, integrity. I like to tell people that integrity is the sparkle that comes back in their children's eyes if their children have seen them loaded, drunk, or, you know, really crazy. And you'll get integrity when you'll see it first in your children's eyes when they finally know you've changed and you're now a trustworthy human being, because you have that integrity to act on your beliefs. You're going to show up for that football game. You know, you're going to be honest in all your affairs with that person. Willingness and humility, brotherly love, justice, perseverance, awareness, and most importantly, service. So, in summary, I don't know many diseases that are, in a way, easy to treat. I know that the treatment for malignant melanoma can be extraordinarily painful, and yet we find resistance for this disease, which is relatively, has a painless treatment. The light of spirituality came on for me in an unusual circumstance as a solo physician in Vermont, and that was the light of spirituality was blue, and it was in my rearview mirror. So you can imagine the difficulty I had when confronting my powerlessness, especially in a town where unusual things can happen for a family physician, like getting busted by a cop you've delivered. So I was fortunate enough to have recovery and sobriety enter my life like a Mack truck. It's not that easy for other people. We have to guide them and show them. Someone was speaking about it earlier, that I think it was Stephen that mentioned that recovery has to be fun. Kids are not going to do it. No one's going to do it unless it's fun. That's why I started using drugs and alcohol, and that's the search I've been on for years. And so with that, I'll say thank you.